Hey LAN Party gamers, or in this case, flight simmers. This is a little bit different. Back here at the Flight Sim, and if you've been watching our channel for a while, you've known that we've covered Flight Sim Expo in the past, and that I am actually a licensed pilot. You can check out my other channel, Brian Annam, for in-flight style videos and vlogs of my travels. But this is the Saitek Yoke, and it has some issues. We have a major dead zone. I'm putting some footage on the screen now where you can see that depending on the way I move the yoke in game, it is drastically different. The sensitivity is all out of whack, and that is all because of these. These are the potentiometers originally in my Saitek yoke. And what we'll be replacing them with, as well as some springs in this yoke, are these. These are Hall effect sensors, and if you watch a lot of Linus Tech Tips and whatnot, you can understand how much better a Hall effect sensor is with its magnetic sensitivity as opposed to resistance sensitivity to rotation. With these, we're going to get a much more sensitive and accurate reading of what we're doing in-game compared to real life, so that we can have a closer to one-to-one with what we do when we actually fly. And that way, when we're going to make a turn or flare for landing, we're not going to end up backwards and on our nose. So follow this sort of how-to and semi-review on the Hall effect sensor kit, and come along for the ride. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is remove these 12 screws from the bottom of the yoke. I've already disconnected it from the rest of the system. Once you have these 6 screws out, don't forget there's also 2 more screws at the base of the control shaft that you have to take out as well. Once all 14 screws have been removed, we can take off the bottom shell of the housing. And be careful not to lose any of the screws, especially the 2 small ones at the base of the neck here. And we'll just set that to the side. Now we've got the case open, we're going to actually mark a few things in here from the original wiring. We've got our wiring harness for pitch and roll, which we need to be able to identify later on to assign those cables to the Hall effect sensors. So I have a R and a P, which we are going to tape to those individual cables. Another thing that I've done to prepare is taken a correction pen and marked the center point where these grooves meet on the stock sensors here, and because we're going to be reusing these teeth. So this is the bottom part here for the pitch axes, as we've also done the top one here for the roll, where the teeth center meets the teeth center. With everything being marked up and looking good, we can go ahead and remove the nasty pitch return spring that causes this sort of detent when you're in the middle of the action. We're going to do that by removing these 2 screws and pulling out the return spring. As this spring is under tension, we'll have to be careful when pulling it up from the post. It's hard to tell, but underneath this pivot arm, we have another one of these springs. So we have to remove this screw to get to that second spring. This is pretty greasy, but what I have to do is hold both sides of this and lift this portion out while the whole thing is under tension due to that underlying spring. So let's give that a try. There it comes. That's pretty greasy. And there is that second spring. With our yoke moving freely forward and aft, we can go ahead and take care of the Hall effects part, the major upgrade for this, and we'll come back to that spring towards the end that'll let it have its centering ability back again. Now we've already done a big part of identifying what's getting upgraded here with marking the center points on the teeth of both of the existing potentiometers that we're going to remove. We've also marked the roll and pitch cables so we can identify them later that are connected to this board here. At this point, what we want to do is take a quick picture of how the wiring is just in case we need it for later. And we can just go ahead and snip the cables going into the existing potentiometers so that we can wire strip them later in this process. And there goes our warranty. Now we're just going to put these wires off to the side and unscrew our two potentiometers. And with all the screws out, we can remove these potentiometers like that. Just make sure you don't accidentally wash off your little white mark that you put to remember the center of the teeth that marks the center of those teeth. We're also going to remove this from the original potentiometer, and we'll attach the same gear to the Hall effect sensor that we received in our kit of the same style. So this is our R for roll. We've got our R for roll that we took off of the potentiometer gear. And we'll just slide that on there in the same orientation that we had it on the previous sensor. And we'll do the same thing to our P for pitch sensor, removing it from our potentiometer version. It takes a little bit of force. And in the same orientation, put that on there like that. When we reinstall these gears, you make sure that your white marks for centering are lined up and that the flat portion of the gear here matches up with the flat portion on your Hall effects sensor here. And if all that's done well, everything should just fall back into place and allow you to put the screws back in. Now with the two Hall effects sensors installed and their screws replaced, we have to start stripping these wires that used to go to the potentiometers. We just need a couple centimeters off the top, and then we're going to be folding those over and placing them into the new bus bar adapter that'll go from the old switch plugs to the new sensor plugs here. Here's our bus bar, and what this does is it takes our original potentiometer signals and translates it to our new signals for the Hall effect sensors. One thing you're going to notice though is coming out of the Hall effect sensors we've got three wires, black, yellow, and red, or red, yellow, and black. However, if we take a look at the original potentiometers, what we have to note, and the reason why we cut off a little extra here, is that they are yellow, red, and black, not red, yellow, and black. Same goes for the roll potentiometer, yellow, red, then black. So with that in mind, when we place these new wires in this bus, we can't simply clone red for red, black for black, yellow for yellow. We have to follow how they came out of these potentiometers, almost as if we're crossing the wires here. So with that in mind, we're going to take our pre-labeled roll wires that we just stripped, look for the roll side here on the bus bar, see that R there, and we're going to assemble it just like it was when it was on here. And that's going to be yellow, red, black. The only two cables that are actually going to be the same between the Hall Effects cabling and the original are going to be our black cable. So if we plug in the roll axis to the R here on the bus, we can see black is the first one, so we'll go ahead and put the R cable black, fold it over like that, and place it inside the bus bar, and then tighten it down. We'll then do the same with red and yellow. Our new signal wires coming from our Hall Effect sensors routed to our old signal wires from the potentiometers using the color code out from the old potentiometers. In this case, on my unit, your may vary, but on my unit I was black to black, yellow to red, and red to yellow. So be very mindful to maybe leave a little bit of your original cable on there or refer to the photograph we took at the beginning. Also be mindful to use P for pitch, goes to the P for pitch on the top of the 3D print, and R to the R. We can now attach this to the side of the unit. All right, so now that we've got the Hall Effects section done, we can continue with our spring modification. And to start out with, I'm going to take a small drill bit, roughly the width of a zip tie that we're going to be using, and punch a hole through this fork here. That'll allow a zip tie to go through it. Now that the sensors are installed, we went ahead and did our flight yoke calibration. Now, if you have the standard Saitek drivers and software, you'll notice that the calibration setting isn't actually in there. There'll be a link to a video on how you can re-enable the calibration setting in the video description below. But we went ahead and ran that setting with the springs for the pitch control not installed, and now we're going to go ahead and put in rubber bands in order to replace the original pitch springs so that we have far less of a dead zone in the middle of our pitch axis. And now we can button up all the screws and try it out in the simulator. All right, after calibrating a couple of times just to make sure I got it perfect, we have very smooth controls now. I can safely say that this feels very similar to what it would be like in an actual aero. And I'm excited to take this out on some VATSIM flights. I don't even need much of the what's on the screen. I've even turned off the internal yoke here because this is reacting so close to what I'm expecting it to. And I can, just like over here, we can put our Garmin's 430 on the display here and get ready to practice some IFR. I think this upgrade was a success. It feels very smooth with the rubber band kit. No more springs or anything in there as far as the pitch control, and the Hall Effect sensors give me much greater feedback in both roll and pitch. So glad we did this. Well, that's it for the Saitek Hall Effect sensor upgrade guide. If you have any questions about more details about the upgrade, make sure you check out the links in the description where you can get these, as well as how we disassembled and upgraded the springs and into rubber bands for the pitch effect on the Saitek Yoke as well. If you want to see more flight sim stuff, there'll be more on the way. Or if you are into real aviation, make sure you subscribe to this channel, as we've got some trips coming up that we want to share with everybody there. And anyway, thanks for coming along on the ride with me this time around.